I thought I was pretty well prepared for womanhood. I'd read the books about periods, pregnancy, parenting, but when it came to pleasure, my sexual health, understanding what was happening to my body in midlife, I had no language, no education, no roadmap. And like so many women, I stayed silent. And that silence didn't protect me. It disconnected me from my body, my partner, and a deep part of myself I didn't know how to reclaim. Here's the truth most of us were never told. Sexual health isn't optional. It's essential to your whole health and longevity. It's directly tied to your physical vitality, mental well-being, and overall life satisfaction. That's exactly why this podcast exists, to break the silence and normalize these conversations. Welcome back to Pleasure in the Pause, the podcast dedicated to empowering midlife women to connect to their bodies, pleasure, and power in perimenopause, menopause, and beyond. I am your host, Gabriela Espinosa, certified women's health and sexual wellness coach, blending science-backed insights, powerful mind-body practices, and modern wisdom to support your journey. Today, I want to invite you into a conversation about reclaiming what's yours, your voice, your body, your right to feel good, because you absolutely deserve to thrive in this season of life. This month is Sexual Health Awareness Month. But let's be real, we need these conversations every month because staying silent isn't just uncomfortable, it's harmful. Today, we're exploring how we learn to silence our sexual selves and why this cultural conditioning is costing us our health. The hidden health crisis where 75% of midlife women experience changes to their sexual health, but most suffer in silence. The pleasure gap that's robbing women of satisfaction and why we prioritize everyone else's comfort over our own. And the transformative power of speaking up. Because when women talk openly about sex, everything changes. So let's get started. Your silence around sex didn't begin with you. It was passed down through generations. Think about this. We can joke about brain fog or hot flashes, swap tips around the latest protein powder or fiber supplement, but when it comes to sexuality in midlife, the conversation dies. So where did this silence actually come from? Well, our mothers and grandmothers lived through eras where their voices and bodily autonomy were rarely honored, where discussing pleasure was considered taboo, where good girls didn't talk about sex. The result? We prepared for periods, for pregnancy, how to be good mothers, and then silence. Nothing prepared us for how midlife might impact our bodies and our sexual selves. And the knowledge gap this created is honestly staggering. In one study conducted in the UK, only 9% of women could identify all parts of the vulva. 60 to 70% of women experience changes to their sexual health and never discuss it with anyone. 78% of women have never had an open, honest conversation about their sexual pleasure. Part of the problem is that we literally don't have the language. We do have dozens of cute or crude names for our genitals, but struggle with real anatomical terms. We can describe a headache in detail, but freeze explaining sexual pain. Many of us can advocate confidently at work, but can't communicate our needs in the bedroom. But here's what's really happening beneath the surface. When we internalize the belief that our sexual selves are shameful, our nervous system categorizes sexual thoughts as threats. Over time, this creates learned helplessness around sexual expression. Our brains literally shut down arousal as protection. Now, let's talk about what's really driving these changes. Declining desire isn't just menopause. It's stress, fatigue, hormonal shifts, relationship dynamics, cultural shame, and life circumstances converging. But it's in the transition from perimenopause to menopause when women most notice these changes and need support. Something is shifting, though. I'm witnessing women in my community questioning inherited narratives, asking questions and demanding better healthcare, seeking education, connecting with other women to share their experiences, and reclaiming pleasure on their terms. Maybe no one told you that your pleasure matters as much as anyone else's, that sexual satisfaction connects to overall mental health and physical well-being, that your changing body doesn't make you less desirable, that you have the right to ask for what you need. Consider this your permission slip, because when we break the silence around sex, we transform our lives and we heal those parts of ourselves that have been silenced for too long. When I looked into what this silence is actually costing us, I was shocked at the statistics. Picture this. 3 out of 4 midlife women are experiencing changes to their libido. That's not a small subset. That's most of us sitting around any table at any gathering, sharing this experience, but never talking about it. And it gets more concerning. 84% of women are dealing with symptoms like vaginal dryness, painful sex, frequent UTIs, and urinary incontinence, what doctors call genitourinary syndrome of menopause. Half of all midlife women are experiencing pain during intimacy. But here's where it gets heartbreaking. Only 7% are receiving treatment for these completely treatable conditions. Why the treatment gap? Because we're not talking about it. Only 1 in 4 women report sexual pain to their doctors. Even fewer, just 15%, share this information with their partners. Instead, they endure pain to please or avoid disappointing their partners. Let that sink in for a moment. Millions of women are suffering through painful sex rather than having conversations that could change everything. When these issues go untreated, they don't just stay the same, they get worse. What starts as discomfort becomes tissue trauma. Occasional UTIs become chronic infections. Minor pain becomes chronic pelvic pain. And eventually, many women avoid intimacy altogether. Long term, we're looking at progressive vaginal atrophy, pelvic floor dysfunction, and deteriorating sexual response. Your body is literally adapting to protect you from something that should bring pleasure. But the costs don't stop at physical symptoms. Sexual dissatisfaction increases your risk of depression by 43%. Women dealing with untreated sexual pain have 2.5 times higher rates of anxiety. And there's a biological reason for this. When sexual health suffers, your brain chemistry changes. Less oxytocin, fewer endorphins, more cortisol, and disrupted sleep patterns. Perhaps most tragically, 40% of midlife divorces cite sexual dissatisfaction as a contributing factor. Couples dealing with unaddressed sexual issues are 5 times more likely to experience relationship distress. Think about that. Relationships that might have been saved are ending, often because no one knew how to start the conversation about what was happening. But perhaps the deepest cost is what happens to our sense of self. When we can't talk about what's happening to our bodies, we start to internalize these changes as personal failures. We see ourselves as broken, past our prime, selfish for even wanting pleasure. This silence doesn't just affect our sex lives, it erodes our sense of vitality and self-worth as women. And then our bodies learn to protect us in ways that hurt us. Here's what's really happening. When sexual experiences become associated with pain or disappointment, Your nervous system, trying to protect you, starts shutting down your arousal response. Your body produces less natural lubrication and reduces blood flow to sexual organs. Arousal becomes more difficult, which creates more frustration. So avoidance increases and the disconnection from your own body deepens. It's like your body is trying to save you from pain, but in doing so, it's cutting you off from pleasure. Because sexual satisfaction isn't just about what happens in the bedroom. Research shows it's directly linked to better cardiovascular health, stronger immune function, improved sleep, reduced chronic pain, and better cognitive function. Regular sexual activity provides health benefits equivalent to moderate exercise. When we lose this connection to our bodies and our pleasure, we're not just missing out on intimacy, we're missing out on vitality itself. And here's what breaks my heart. Most of these issues are completely treatable. Hormonal therapies can restore comfort and desire. Pelvic floor therapy can eliminate pain. Communication strategies can transform relationships. Education can reconnect you to your body's wisdom. But silence keeps us from accessing any of these solutions. We suffer with problems that have answers because we don't know how to ask the questions. So let me be completely clear about something. You are not broken. Your body is not defective, and you are definitely not alone. Every single symptom I've described is common, understandable, treatable, and absolutely worth addressing. Your sexual health isn't a luxury. It's an essential part of your overall well-being. But unfortunately, when we do try to seek help, the system often fails us. So you've recognized these symptoms, you've decided to speak up, you've made that appointment with your doctor. But here's where things get even more frustrating. The healthcare system itself is set up in a way that makes addressing sexual health incredibly difficult. Let me share some numbers that explain why your doctor might seem uncomfortable or dismissive when you bring up sexual concerns. Only 25% of medical schools even require sexual health education. 68% of practicing doctors admit they feel uncomfortable discussing sex. And 80% won't bring up sexual health unless you do first. Think about that. Even if you're experiencing obvious symptoms, there's a good chance your doctor won't ask about them. I see this pattern over and over again. Women come in presenting with fatigue, anxiety, mood changes, sleep issues. They walk out with prescriptions for antidepressants, anti-anxiety medications, and sleep aids. But rarely are they asked about hormonal changes, sexual function, or the connection between sexual health and mental health. When I started experiencing heart palpitations and anxiety during perimenopause, my doctor immediately prescribed beta blockers and antidepressants. There were no questions about my menstrual cycle changes, my sleep patterns, or my relationships, or my sexual health for that matter. I spent thousands of dollars on supplements and alternative treatments, never realizing that hormonal changes were at the root of so many of my symptoms. And when women do bring up sexual concerns, too many hear responses like, that's just part of aging. Try some lubricant, or maybe you just need to relax more. These dismissive responses don't just fail to help, they reinforce the shame that keeps women from seeking further care. But here's the empowering truth. Research shows that women who initiate conversations about sexual health with their providers are 4 times more likely to receive helpful treatment. Self-advocacy actually works, but you need to know how to do it. Before your next appointment, document your symptoms, their timing, and how they're affecting your life. Prepare specific questions. Make an appointment specifically to address your sexual health. Don't make it part of your well woman's visit and mention it as you're about to walk out the door. Document your symptoms before that appointment. their timing, and how they're affecting your life. Prepare specific questions. Don't accept dismissal. Ask for your concerns to be documented in your chart and request referrals when needed. Seek out providers who are certified in sexual medicine or menopause care. You deserve healthcare providers who understand that sexual health is essential to your overall well-being, not an optional add-on. Even when we navigate the healthcare system, there's yet another layer to this. Getting treatment for physical symptoms is just one part of the picture. Because what we're really talking about here isn't just the absence of pain, it's the presence of pleasure. And that's where we uncover an even deeper issue, the pleasure gap that's been robbing women of satisfaction for generations. When I say pleasure gap, I'm talking about the full spectrum of sexual satisfaction that most women have never been taught they deserve. Here's a reality check. 95% of men reach orgasm during partnered sex, compared to just 65% of women. And perhaps even more telling, 73% of women say they prioritize their partner's pleasure over their own. When my desire started shifting during perimenopause, I found myself faking interest, going through the motions, sometimes even faking orgasms. Not because I wanted to, because I had no language for what had changed. I didn't know how to say something's different or I need more time, more gentleness. Here's what's crucial to understand. Most women experience what's called responsive desire, arousal that builds in response to stimulation rather than spontaneous desire. Female arousal typically takes 20 to 45 minutes compared to 3 to 5 minutes for men. And most women need clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm. In midlife, these patterns often become even more pronounced, but most women and their partners don't understand this shift. True sexual wellness includes body literacy, emotional safety, communication skills, nervous system regulation, curiosity, and novelty. It's about feeling vital, connected, and satisfied in your whole being. Here's what gives me hope about midlife. Sexuality can actually improve with age. You develop better communication skills, more confidence in asking for what you want. You feel free from pregnancy concerns and the capacity for deeper intimacy and better standing of your own body and desires increases. Sexual satisfaction improves your sleep, mood, stress levels, immune function, cardiovascular health, and overall life satisfaction. This isn't vanity, it's vital health information. You deserve to take the time you need for getting turned on, to ask for what you want, to prioritize your pleasure equally with your partners, to say no when you're not interested, to explore what feels good for your body now. Your pleasure isn't selfish, it's essential to your vitality and health. All right, so here's where this gets really exciting. I've just painted a pretty sobering picture of where we are. The silence, the health costs, the system failures, the pleasure we're missing. But now I want to share what happens when women start breaking that silence. Because the transformation that occurs, it's honestly incredible. A study conducted at Stanford University blew my mind. Women who participated in sexual health discussions experienced a 67% improvement in desire, 58% increase in satisfaction, and 43% better ability to reach orgasm, all within just 12 weeks. And here's the kicker. These improvements happen primarily through talking, not medical interventions. When couples start discussing their sexual needs openly, they report 3 times higher relationship satisfaction. When you start talking honestly with your partner about sex, profound shifts happen in ways you might not expect. Expressing your desire creates deeper intimacy. Research shows that couples who communicate sexual preferences are 5 times more likely to reach mutual satisfaction. Your partner genuinely can't read your mind about what's changed or what you need now. Sharing vulnerability strengthens emotional bonds. When you say something like, "Something's different for me," or "I need more time to get aroused," you're modeling authenticity that deepens connection far beyond the bedroom. Regular sexual check-ins transform relationships. Simple questions like, "What felt good?" or "What would you like more of?" create ongoing dialogue that prevents resentment and actually builds anticipation. Discussing changes together reduces shame and isolation. When you explain that your body needs different things now, most partners feel relief. They want to please you, but they need guidance. The result? 60% lower rates of relationship conflict and partners who report feeling more seen and connected. There's actually neuroscience behind this. Shame activates your stress response systems, but open communication activates your connection systems. It increases oxytocin, activates your parasympathetic nervous system, and enhances problem-solving abilities. Women who start talking about sex become better advocates for themselves everywhere. Their overall communication improves, body confidence increases, and as shame lifts, they develop more presence and willingness to explore. When women share their experiences with each other, it normalizes what felt isolating, provides practical solutions, creates permission for others to speak up, and builds support networks for ongoing challenges. When we speak openly about sexuality, we heal backwards and forwards through our lineages. Our daughters inherit healthier models of sexuality and self-advocacy. Something I didn't expect. Women who reclaim their sexual voices often experience increased workplace confidence, better boundary setting, and more willingness to advocate for themselves professionally. Every time you speak up about your sexual health, you give another woman permission to do the same. You break a link in the generational silence chain. You contribute to cultural shifts toward openness and acceptance. We're not just changing our own lives, we're changing the world for future generations. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with both a challenge and a promise. This Sexual Health Awareness Month, I'm inviting you to choose one conversation you've been avoiding. Maybe it's scheduling that appointment you've been postponing, having an honest talk with your partner about what's changed, reaching out to a friend to ask if they're going through something similar, or simply speaking more kindly to yourself about your evolving body. You deserve to feel good in your body at every life stage, to experience pleasure and satisfaction, to have your sexual health taken seriously, to speak without shame about your needs, to feel fully alive and vital in midlife and beyond. If you're ready for more support and actually closing that pleasure gap, I'd love to invite you into my Pleasure Upgrade VIP coaching program. This is a private one-to-one experience where we work together to help you understand your unique sexual blueprint, build practices for solo and partnered pleasure that truly work for you, advocate for your needs clearly and confidently without guilt or shame, create deeper, more satisfying intimacy that ripples into every area of your life. You don't have to settle for going through the motions while your own pleasure takes a backseat. With the right guidance, you can experience intimacy that excites and sustains you in ways that make you feel more vibrant, more connected, and more yourself. If you're feeling the internal nudge or whisper of a yes, you'll find the link to learn more about the Pleasure Upgrade coaching program in the show notes. I'd be honored to support you in making this next chapter one where you feel turned on, not just in the bedroom, but in your whole life. Because your silence has cost you enough. It's time for your satisfaction. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Pleasure in the Pause. Your support means everything. Want to help me spread more pleasure in the world? Please hit subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with the women in your life. This one action helps us break the silence and make sure more women know they are not alone. It really does make all the difference in moving from silence to satisfaction. Remember, your pleasure matters, your voice matters, and you deserve to feel fully alive in this season of life.